Check, check.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Sean Callan. Julie Chetney.
Here.
Tom Chiappa.
Here.
David Crisafulli.
Here.
Jim McKenzie's here. Kristen Norfleet.
Here.
And Sean Onlock is not present. If we could stand for the pledge, please. Okay, so there was nobody who signed up for the floor to the public. So the first item is Board of Education, which is the memorandum agreement between the school district and OCTA Teachers Union. So if I can have a motion for Agenda 4A, please.
I'll make a motion.
Thank
I'll
you, Julie.
second.
Thank you, Kristen. This is not discussable, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now that it's ratified and it is discussable, I'd just like to thank the OCTA leadership and Dr. Kilmer for working this out on behalf of the district. So thank you. Superintendent's report with Dr. Kilmer.
So today is the day that you will be tasked approving the proposed 25-26 school year budget. We've had a number of reports already, so this is kind of bundling it together, and then we'll kind of go from there. Is it broken? Yes. You broke it already? I literally was here 5 seconds. All right, so the 25-26 budget, just to go over our remaining timeline. So today, we have the formal approval of the proposed budget and the tax report card as well. May 6th, our next meeting is the official budget hearing. I will present a similar budget, maybe a little bit of additional detail, try to answer any questions maybe the public might have. All set. And then the 20th is our budget vote. Our budget guidelines have been the same from the very beginning. You know, when we're looking at any budget development, it's about making sure that we are being fiscally responsible, that we are being responsive to our community, and then most importantly, providing what it is that our students need. This budget continues to focus in on safety and security, prioritizes our programming, our staff to ensure that our students are prepared for what comes next. So we talk about this all the time, and a really important part of school district budgets is the ability to provide some comparison between districts. And so New York State mandates that we provide a 3-part budget. So you can look at proportionally what is a district spending focused to program, administrative, and or, of course, capital. In the previous budget, we reviewed briefly what was in the capital budget. So capital budget includes the infrastructure, so the main components of the operations of the district. This is a real quick breakdown of the details that's within that. So when you're looking at our most significant kind of changes is going to be in salaries and contractual, so those are some contractual changes. And then you'll see a significant decrease in our band, in our debt service. It's our band payment. Last year, I was standing here and saying, hey, we have a significant increase from budget year to budget year. This year, we have a significant decrease. And so you will see that. My hope is, and that's why I brought to you that long-range capital improvement plan to you, is we really want to see this look much more steady. We don't want to see those ups and downs because that makes it a little bit more difficult for Mr. Colucci and I to plan for that even budget. And so the further that we move along, my hope is that you're going to see that level out, and you won't see those wide changes in year to year. Our administrative budget, again, similarly, the largest changes are really contractual based. But again, from year to year, we're talking about a $500,000 difference. Our largest difference year to year is actually in program. And program is everything that's connected to kids, right? This is where instruction is happening in the classroom. This is expansion of instructional programs, special education services, counseling services, social worker, all that work that we did last year, we are continuing to do in the 25 and 26. Last year, I know I came to you and we talked a lot about, we had a significant increase, specifically in benefits, our medical benefits. We saw a really significant increase in claims. We are, as you know, self-insured. And so when there are significant increases in claims, we as a district pay out those claims. And so we saw some volatility last year. We budgeted differently, I think more appropriately for that this year, and that will continue in the 25 and 26 school year. So again, that 3-part budget, when we're looking at in comparisons, We have approximately $90 million in program, $11.4 million in administrative, and about $15 million when we're talking about capital. I want us to focus on the percentages because that's really one of the most important pieces. Where are we spending the majority of our budget? Well, 78% of our budget is spent on program, Kids First. And that's really where we want to be. We want to be in that 75% or higher of the proportionality of our budget focused on our staff and kids. Capital is about 13%. And that's a pretty standard, and we're maybe a little bit under, that might be more typical, closer to 15%. And that administrative is under 10. Again, right where we want to be, that proportionality. And the district historically has done a really excellent job of watching that proportionality. I think I showed a very similar graph to this last year, again, showing that the major focus of any budget is focused back on what kids needs. And that's why that largest portion is in program and why we're beginning to see, again, that focus of increasing in that program line. So I talked about expenditures. How are we going to pay for it? That's always an important piece. And so let's talk about our revenues. We have very limited sources of revenue: state aid, taxes. And so there's a couple of ways in which we're looking at that. So I'm going to talk through that a little bit. So our proposed revenue for next year, comparisons from this year and next year, state aid overall, I'm going to break down state aid a little bit more for you, a little bit more granular for you in a second. But we're looking at about a $3.6 million change from the 24-25 to an estimate of 25-26. As everyone I think knows, New York State has still not passed their budget. So everything in the revenue column is an estimate, right? And honestly, that's not atypical. Even if the budget was passed, these would still be estimates because there's real-time data that isn't finalized until later that would sometimes impact aid, right? And so estimates are always going to be where we are focused. Our tax levy from 24-25 to 2025-26 is flat. We are not in this budget asking our community to contribute any more than they contributed last year. So we are absolutely coming in with a budget with a 0% increase from year to year when we're talking about our tax levy. Pilots, those are those payments in lieu of taxes. They're still a tax, but payment in lieu of taxes, we see a slight increase, or estimate a slight increase of about $800,000 from year to year. And other sources, interest, donations, we see that at about the same, $2.1 million. And so we have a balanced budget of revenue to expenditures, $116,640,000. When we break down aid a little bit more granularly, there's a lot of aid categories that we're watching closely. Typically, people are very focused on foundation aid and the formula. That is our largest source of funding. And we did see about a $2.8 to $2.9 million increase. That's what we estimate. BOCES aid, that is expenditure driven. So depending on how much we contract with BOCES will determine how much revenue we generate when we're utilizing BOCES. Using BOCES, especially for a district like Oswego, makes good, solid fiscal sense. Every dollar we spend in services, we generate aid in the following year. And Oswego City gets considerable aid when you're talking about percentage-wise in comparison to some other districts, say outside of Oswego County, if you go to Onondaga County and such. So it does make sense for us to leverage BOCES to help us in that. And so that is, again, an expense-driven aid. High-cost aid, instructional materials, transportation, again, not huge changes from year to year, and we wouldn't necessarily expect huge changes from year to year. And then building aid. Building aid is directly connected to our capital projects, right? So as we finish projects, that will then generate more aid for us. So just go back to the 2018 project. We're still working through some of those phases. We just did final cost reports for 3B of the 2018 project, which was focused entirely at the middle school instructional. By completing that just this semester, that directly then impacted building aid for the 25-26 school year. So every single time that we do, that generates that. What we would also expect to be in that estimate was our emergency project. So the emergency project at the middle school, that parapet, that was about $350,000 that we had to expend out of the 24-25 budget. We didn't budget for that, but we had reserves that we could use. Well, that we will get back in full in the following year because it was declared a true emergency. Not all emergencies are funded back in a single year. Sometimes they're spread out over 15 years. But that project was what they considered a true emergency, meaning necessary and immediate, not foreseeable, and therefore they give aid back in a single year. And so those are the types of things that impact building aid. Our reserves, we talked a little bit about this last year as well. We have a strong foundation of reserves. Now, this is always about a year behind when we look at our reserves. You'll notice specifically in capital, it shows more than $10 million. We no longer have $10 million in capital reserve. We have a little over $1 million because in October, when the public gave us approval to move forward with the 2024 project and utilize $9 million of capital reserve, that money was pulled out and set aside. But this is always kind of a year behind. That was a $10 million capital reserve. It's slightly larger than that because of interest. We can never go beyond what was authorized by the voters in a reserve, but as interest draws and collects, that can actually stay in there. So we have about $1.2 million remaining in the original capital reserve. And then don't forget, the community did authorize the Board of Education to establish another $15 million capital reserve for us to begin saving for the future projects that we've talked a great deal about as well. That is not listed here only because we haven't made the decision, or you haven't made the decision, to add or shift any of that money into those reserves at this time. So, in short, 24-25, the calculated tax levy for 25-26, there is no change. 0%, $0. Tax levy from year to year is the same. As a reminder, and we talked a little bit about this last year, we did ask for a slight increase, and we did that by trying to show what the district has done in comparison to inflation. And the district has historically not kept up with inflation, both in aid, but also trying to go to our tax cap. The district has taken a very strong, or the Board of Education, I should say, has taken a very strong stance as to we want to be very cautious about going to our community and asking for more, especially if it isn't 100% necessary. And so I believe the board has done that and continues to do that. This chart continues to kind of show that while our budget grows proportionally, what we're asking from our local taxpayers has stayed flat or slightly decreased, right? So while our budget has absolutely risen, our focus is on how are we mitigating those rising costs and trying to protect our local community from additional burden. State aid has helped with that. Some very good fiscal decisions by this board and previous boards has kind of set the stage ultimately for that. I did mention this in our last meeting. We do include in this budget another $100,000 capital outlay. Again, this is something that is fully aidable in a given year. That work is done. In the 24-25 year, it was focused on Riley. We got through, or we are getting through a few exterior doors. $100,000 only gets you so much. So this $100,000 will again focus on trying to complete as much of that exterior door work, door hardening work at Riley as we can, and maybe even getting that flagpole out front replaced as well. So this is a unique year as well, because we always talk about, well, what happens if the budget doesn't pass, right? It's called a contingency vote. So the board has two options. They can reevaluate the budget, see if there are other changes they want to make, and bring a budget back to the voters. Or they can adopt a contingency. This is a unique year in that we're asking for zero, and so the tax levy is the same, whether we're in a contingency or not. But what a contingency does do is it limits some on the expenditure side of things. It limits certain types of purchases that we can make within a budget. So any non-health or safety or preservation of facility-related equipment would have to come out. Community or non-school use of facilities kind of has to come out, or 100% of the cost has to be saddled by that organization. There can be no cost to the district. Or the final transfer to capital items would be restricted. Okay? But again, in this case, we are already at a zero, so tax levy would remain the same even in a contingency budget in this situation. So, fast facts, we preserve all programs for our students. Again, we are balanced. We are below the property tax cap. We have a tax levy increase of 0%. We continue our focus on social and emotional learning, safety and security in our facilities, and of course, investing in our facility upgrades. Propositions for this year include the vote, Board of Education members. I did mention before the purchase of transportation vehicles. So we are again asking for 9 buses this year, 8 full-size buses, 1 wheelchair bus, a total bond of about $1.5 million. We talked through this in the past. We have favorable aid, transportation aid from New York State as well. And so while we have to ask permission to bond for any type of purchase from the community, it is important to note that we get about $20,000 per bus for trade-in. When we factor that, plus the aid that we get back, the annual cost to the district is about $36,000, right? So it is important to understand that. In this case, because of the aid, because of what we get in trade-in value, this makes good sense and actually keeps our costs down. Because a lot of that service work, if we kept buses for longer, would exceed what it is that we're paying here on this replacement plan that we have. And then the last is the public library levy as well. Questions on the proposed 25-26 school budget? Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Kilmer and Mr. Colucci, for all the work on putting together our budget. So we're to committee discussions. So facilities committee?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple things. We have a meeting this Thursday, so at our last board meeting, I mentioned how every couple weeks we get together, facilities committee. So one thing that I asked in our last meeting, and we're going to be able to get that out to the community, and I can, certainly to you guys, for our 2024, the work that we've done so far on the 2018 project, and some of the things that we're working on planning for the 2024, like the OHS technology suite, the media center, the middle school office area. I thought it would be good while we're talking about this and working with the building administrators, that the community sees what we're thinking about, what's coming down the line. Visuals really help. We can talk, I can sit here and say we meet every couple weeks, but I asked King and King if they could put some things together to show really show what we're thinking of, what we've accomplished, so that it's just more visible. So hopefully we'll have that out to our community and to you guys in the near future here. Just quickly, EPC work, we're still moving forward. The lighting improvements and things like that continue to move at a good pace. And, you know, kind of balancing the remainder of the 2018 capital project with phase 4A and 4B. Dr. Kilmer just mentioned some of the work that we'll be doing up at the middle school. But these things are all together and coming together. So we're moving along. There's a lot of stuff to think about in the next one, and then what's left for the table for the next one. So hopefully we can just keep it in order and keep you guys updated. So that's what I had.
Yeah, just to follow up with what Sean was talking about, there are so many projects going on all at the same time here in Oswego. We really do need to do a better job of helping everyone understand what's in what project, what's happening at what time, and what they can expect next. So right now, we're getting that EPC work done. So again, that's lighting throughout the entire district. That's envelope upgrades. That's new boilers in Riley Elementary School. It's some work here at the pools, covers and those types of things. Just again, all about efficiency. And so all of that work will be done or should be done prior to next fall. Then we have work from the 2018 Phase 4 project. That is actually, design work is actually complete, and submission to state ed just this month. Actually, it's going out this week. And so once we get approval from state ed on that Phase 4, which will include work here primarily at the high school, so Buck Boulevard, the Layton Elementary School, the Liberty Street parking lot. There's the tennis courts here will be shifted around a little bit, make room for an expanded parking lot to serve Layton and a bus loop in front of Layton, and the Ed Center and our Community Health Center. So all of that work is part of Phase 4. We also got some work at the middle school, work that'll be part of a Phase 4, some tennis courts at the middle school. And then the 2024 project, we've got some work that we hope may start this summer, and if not summer, hopefully by fall, because we're trying to push some of this work more quickly. So one thing that we know that will occur this summer, or it's at least in the works, and unless there's a significant issue when it comes to actually getting the materials, but elevators at both Kingsford and Fitzhugh Park. We also have, and we're pushing along and hoping that we can get the boilers done at Layton. That will be kind of one of our final original boilers set plants. That our hope is that we might be able to push that quick enough to hopefully get that done before the next heating season. We're still not sure whether or not that timeline will work. And then there's a lot of generators for all of our buildings that need updating and or replacing. So all of that work was really pushed, and we actually did a submittal to state ed for that 2024 project already and have most of that approval already. And so our hope is within the next few weeks, we're going out to bid on that as well. And so really what we're trying to do is we're trying to play some catch up in getting some work done, but more importantly, trying to address the real needs that our buildings and campuses have and do so as quickly as possible. After next year, once we close out the 2018 project, we won't be juggling so many projects. Having an EPC, I mean, we actually just also are closing out the Smart School Bond project, which was adding cameras throughout the district that we've been doing this spring. So we've got a lot of projects all going on at the same time. And again, we're able to do that because of long-range planning, because of great state aid opportunities that the district has capitalized on well. So the district is, hopefully the community will begin to see more of these improvements. They're not always behind the scenes. You know, you can't see boilers unless you're going into a boiler room, but I think that the community is going to be able to visually see some of these great improvements in the very near future.
Right. If we just to touch on timeline quick and how we're looking at things, the 2018 capital project, and we sit here in 2025, and that's over many, many years. So what we've decided is maybe smaller. I mean, 46.5 isn't really small, but in the 2024 capital project, it is a lot less. It's more manageable, and as you prolong the length over years of a project, escalation, you know, you budget this much money, but if it's 8 years down the road, it's going to cost more. So if we can just take lesser bites, if you will, and manage those and be more, you know, closer to what we budgeted and manage that better, that's kind of part of our planning in these, you know, more frequent and smaller capital improvement projects. So, and even you can talk about just Buck Boulevard and the parking lots and everything. But again, if you guys saw renditions of what it's going to look like when you drive down Buck Boulevard in 2 years versus what it looks like today, it is a full transformation. So that's just very exciting for everybody to see and while they're waiting for it.
So we will probably this summer, whether it be June or July, I'm not 100% sure on the timeline, but our summer newsletter that will go out, we will dedicate a large part of that newsletter to this facility work. So for instance, when you're sitting in this space is a huge part of the 24 project. If you could see the renderings, you wouldn't recognize the space, right? If you go down to our technology suite and stand in there and then look at what the renderings look like, they look like they're out of a different school. And so that's what I hope will get the community excited and students excited, and we've got to do a better job of getting that information out so the community can see that, because it takes time for that work to actually happen.
Okay, thank you. All right, facilities, we've been, and it's not going to stop being busy, so. Visitation, Julie.
Yes. Well, I'll probably piggyback on what you both were saying, because I wanted to say we visited Minetto Elementary School. And all the way home, I kept thinking to myself, what a little hidden gem Minetto is. Because in my 20 years of having kids in this district, I'd never been in Minetto. One time, I think. So it's hard for me to compare how far Minetto's come over the last decade, but I did get a distinct impression when I saw some of the bathrooms there. So the building itself was amazing. The lighting, again, I feel like a broken record when I talk about going into these schools. The lighting is beautiful and welcoming, and the feel is different than it's ever been in any of our schools. We did get to look at all of the learning spaces that Minetto has utilized, and they've done a really great job. I feel like their classrooms were large, especially in the K through 2 suite was very nice. And they really have done such great work with all of their spaces, including like their PT, their OT, their psychology suite, which was right off of their cafeteria, was beautiful, very inviting. And I just feel like they really have done a beautiful job. Again, I did not see it before, so I'm with you. Like pictures and seeing and it's one thing, like as I'm sitting here listening to you, Sean, talk about, you know, Liberty Street and Buck Boulevard and the tennis courts, and the community's going to see that because it's out there. But a place like Minetto, where I was really kind of blown away by what a beautiful school it is. And I know, and just talking with Jenny, who's been there and has seen some of that transition, she's pretty proud of the school that she's working in. That said, I wanted to just mention that I feel like the culture of Minetto, like a lot of our schools, should be noted. Their staff's super friendly, super welcoming, and the students are so excited, and I love being there when they're coming. And as I sat in the parking lot to leave, as I was watching their drop-off and their drop-off line, which ran pretty smoothly, they were playing in their announcements. Did you guys stay? No, you did? Did you hear the announcements? Do you know what I'm going to say? Oh, at the end of the announcements, the kids were doing this. Now, they played an entire verse of Sweet Caroline and then did a little cheer afterwards. And it just really kind of wrapped up the visit. So the culture of the building was pretty amazing. The downside, obviously, like most of our schools, I feel like the gym and the cafeteria need help. And I'm just being kind, but they do what they can, and I love what they're doing with those spaces. But they do really stand apart from all of the work that has been done at Minetto. It really is telling when you go from bathroom renovations that have just taken place to bathrooms that have not been touched. Everything about it, the lighting, the tile, it's literally like a time zone. Like you're stepping back about 50 years. So it's very interesting. And again, it just made me appreciate all the work that's been done in Minetto. What else? I do want to say, I do wish the community could see some of the insides of our indoors of our schools. Someone like myself who'd never been to Minetto, I had no idea what to expect. So I was pretty impressed. And as far as their new HVAC system, I will turn it over to the gentleman to my left to talk about that. Spot on. You're in charge of that. You're in charge of that. It looked nice.
It's nice. It's wicked nice. No, it's great. Very efficient system that was both heating and cooling, and very nice and very efficient. They had to utilize a space and bring it in, so widen a doorway in order to get that in there. But I think the upgrades on all the boilers that we're having and all the HVAC stuff that's being done are great improvements and should last an awful long time, because some of our boilers in some of the schools have been there for so long, and they've well outlived their usefulness. And so to see that taking place in there, it's going to make that space much more comfortable for everybody involved and to be a better environment for everyone.
And thank you to Jenny for showing us around. It was really great. Great visit.
Thank you, Julie. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda, of which we have 4 items I'd like to group together, please. So if I can get a motion for consent agenda items A through D.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Julie. Any discussion on consent agenda items A through D? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, we're to personnel. We'll start with item A, which is a professional staff recommendation for Sandra McCann, who's admirably served our students and staff as an elementary teacher September 1st, 2000. And so we'd like to hereby recognize her dedication and express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for her years of service. So if I can have a motion for item A, please.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Julie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. I'm going to group our professional staff recommendations together, please. So if I can have a motion for personnel items B through E.
I'll move.
Thank you, Kristen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any discussion on personnel items B through E? Okay, having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, we have support staff and extra compensatory recommendations. These are items F through N. So if we can have a motion for personnel items F through N, please.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, David. Any discussion here? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, we're to finance. We're going to do item A by itself because this requires a roll call vote. And this is our resolution to adopt the 2025-2026 budget proposal and the 2025-2026 property tax report card. So if I can have a motion for finance item A, please.
Move it.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion before the vote? Okay. Diane? Okay.
Sean?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Passes unanimously. We're going to group the rest of the finance items together. There's some budget transfers, some donations, and some MOUs. These are items B through N. So if I can have a motion for finance items B through N, please.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Tom. Any discussion?
Just as always, to thank the donors and the donations, particularly, and also the one from the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation for that project. It's going to take place here with Jamie Sykett, and that's awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Any other further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is items from the board. Do any board members have items this evening?
I just wanted to say that some of the students of the senior class wanted to extend their gratitude for us approving their senior trip. They're really, really excited, and we're very happy.
Great, thank you.
I actually have a question for Ray. During the presentation and specific to buses, I was thinking the other day, and I don't even know what qualifications, like shorter buses, like let's just say we had an athletic team that was comprised of 9 student athletes, and maybe that didn't take a full yellow bus. Does state aid come into play? Like if a school district goes and purchases a smaller type of bus or transportation vehicle, can you get state aid for that? Can a school district get state aid for those types of vehicles that don't need a CDL and more people might be able to drive?
So, and this is where, Mr. Clucci, I'm going to ask you, so for instance, Mr. Gunn just sent me a bunch of requirements to me so that I could possibly stand in and do some of that work for them if they needed to. But the only things that I could do, because I don't have my CDL, are really, if I was driving a van or Suburban, one of those types of vehicles. I don't believe in, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Clucci, a smaller, like a half bus, I think you still need your CDL. Is that accurate?
It depends on how many passengers you take. So typically, anything that's, over 14, you need a CDL, and you need the passenger endorsement and the school endorsement to drive students there. So, there's a lot of things that go together. In terms of the equipment itself, okay? If we were to purchase the equipment with the idea being that we would be transporting students for their regular educational program, whether it be to another site or OCs or something like that, the size of the vehicle leaves us to be in a position where we could still get aid like we get aid on regular buses. The extracurricular piece, okay, athletics and things like that, those trips are not, the cost of the fuel and the driver and the mileage and things like that, those things are not aidable under transportation aid, but the equipment is. Does that make sense? So I think, so to answer your question, if we were to buy different vehicles other than large buses to transport students, with the idea being that we're doing it for their program, we could receive transportation aid on what we spend on them and would probably either lease them or, and that's hard to do, or put them in with the rest of our bonding so that we get paid back over 5 years.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about the qualifications needed for those types of vehicles because of the complications that we have and the outsourcing that we have to do because we just don't have the human resources for the routes that we have today, you know, so all those things tie together. But you don't need to, if it's not aided, then you kind of don't need to continue the conversation in my head. This is just between me and me.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. But we do have some smaller size buses, kind of half-size buses, and we also have vans that the district is currently utilizing for some transportation of program.
Any other board members this evening? Okay, there is not need for an executive session, so I'm going to move to adjourn. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Kristen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, David. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Have a great evening, everybody.